So here we go, Proverbs kicking off today. I'm excited. I've been excited about this series. I put it on the calendar last October, I believe, and said, man, I want to preach Proverbs. Now, Proverbs is a really, really incredible book, but it's a very direct book. How many of you really enjoy direct communication? How many of you like softer communication? It's okay if you do. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just going to tell you, though, Proverbs doesn't necessarily function that way. Proverbs is kind of just straight to the point, all right? And so prepare yourself for that. Proverbs is broken up in two sections of the book. It's 31 chapters long. The first 9 chapters are this is how you use this book. The last 21 chapters or 22 chapters from chapter 10 to verse chapter 31 is all little nuggets of wisdom. There's some good stuff in there, man. There's stuff about nagging wives. There's stuff about prideful men. There's stuff about kids and youth doing foolish, youthful things. But we're not going to spend much time there. I'm going to let you read those. I'm going to stay for the next several weeks in the first 9 chapters of the book of Proverbs. Because I think, maybe you guys could amen me on this if I'm right, I think our culture needs wisdom. Amen. Information, we got. We have an abundance of information. There's probably more information downloaded into people now at a higher rate of speed than there has been in any point in history. You can learn anything about anything in a matter of moments in the current culture that we live in. Good, bad, ugly, indifferent, it doesn't matter. But I will also say, I don't know that we've ever lived in a culture where we had to tell people, you should not eat laundry detergent. Right? Before some of you more mature folks start saying things like this younger generation. It's been 35 years ago when someone said, and someone sued and won a corporation because their coffee was hot. There should be a warning on your coffee cup. Yes. Did you want it cold? No. But I should warn you it's going to be hot? Yes. Okay. You know, there's a road sign that's printed that said, road will be wet in rainy conditions. We're doomed. And so as I look around, I see people, and of course, we always get into the generational thing. If you're Gen X, you're Gen Alpha, you're a millennial, you're Gen Z. Where are my Gen Z people at? You don't know? It's okay. Boomers and the whole mix of them. I hear that argument a lot. It's all of us. We all need wisdom. We've all done things. If I were to ask you if any of you ever made any decisions without using your brain at all, every hand would go up. Every generation's hand would go up. Somebody decided to make the Pinto. I know, and somebody in here's right now going, car wasn't that bad. Yes, it was. Don't defend it. And so we have these things that happen. In generation, it doesn't matter. It's the use of this idea of wisdom is saying, okay, I may have knowledge, but I need to make sure that I'm doing something with the knowledge that I have that's effective, that's pushing things forward. And you can know a lot of good stuff. You can have all kinds of knowledge and not do one wise thing with it. And so when we get into this study of Proverbs, my real hope and my real heart is that we would take a second and go, Lord, teach us to be wise. Teach us to use wisdom. Teach us to use your word as a guide so that we make right decisions. We make the best decisions out of wisdom. I've heard people define wisdom as wisdom is knowing what to do with your knowledge. I go, well, I can get with that to a point. But John Piper says this is his definition of wisdom. I don't always agree with everything John Piper says, but I really appreciated this definition. He said, wisdom in the Bible is knowing the greatest goal in any situation and the best way to achieve the goal. I was like, that makes sense to me. I want to be wise enough to be a wise husband or spouse. I want to be a wise father. I want to be a wise friend. And so in my relationship with you, Joe, my goal is this would be healthy, that it would be beneficial to you, that it would be fulfilling for you, life-giving for you. If that's the goal, then there are certain ways that I can go about doing that. And if I use wisdom, I'll walk that out. And then when that relationship is done, there is a benefit of loyalty that comes along with achieving that goal. Just in friendship, I can walk the same process through my marriage or my job, my career, you name it, your classes, your schoolwork, all of this stuff. If you'll pursue these things with wisdom, God will do something incredible in it. But we don't really chase wisdom, we chase knowledge. The more we know. I mean, G.I. Joe used to tell us that back in the 80s. Right? Knowing is half the battle. Yeah, a lot of people stopped at half the battle. They didn't get the other part. I think, what was the Reading Rainbow? And LeVar Burton? That star would go across the screen and it would say, the more you know. And I don't know that we don't know too much. Because as much as we've learned, I don't know how wise we are. I don't know if we've applied our hearts to wisdom. And so Solomon comes along, and Solomon is recognized as the wisest person. He's kind of got this tag on him. He was a great king for Israel. We see that his wisdom and some of the things that he achieved were achieved because David before him set the table. Solomon's temple gets a lot of run. Solomon built the temple, and yes, he did, but David had all the supplies there. He made sure he laid some groundwork. We talked about that last week in Legacy. Make sure you're laying groundwork so the generations have something to build on after you. And so Solomon sits down and goes, man, I think our culture needs some pointers on how to make the right decisions, the best decisions, because they're stepping off into some stuff that doesn't make a lot of sense. And even in Solomon's life, there were some things in his life that didn't make a lot of sense. As wise as he was. And so he starts off this book, the book of Proverbs, with just a simple introduction. And he says it this way, the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. So we're getting a little point in history here. This is Solomon's the king. He is living it up. He is doing king stuff. And he says, I need to sit down and I need to write. And he starts off this first paragraph by giving us the focus, or basically giving us a description of the three people groups he's going to talk about. And then he gives us a statement that kind of sets the standard for the rest of the book. So here we go. Let's walk through it. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 1. The proverb of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. Here's the purpose, verse 2. To know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, and equity. And then he starts kind of describing, to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the youth. These are same category here, the simple and the youth. He's same verse here, and Solomon didn't break it down verse-wise, but this passage is kind of reaching out to the same group of folks. To the simple, we want prudence. To the young, we want knowledge and discretion. Let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance. To understand a proverb and a saying, the words of the wise and their riddles. Verse 7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And then he gives us another descriptor. The fool despises wisdom and instruction. Now, how many of you ever heard the phrase, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge? Some of you have, some of you haven't. Well, it's repeated multiple times in Proverbs. It's also mentioned in Psalms. I've got a couple here. I'll just give them to you and read them. If you want to just write down the text so that you have it, you can dig into it later. Psalms 111, verse 10 says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. All who practice it have a good understanding. His praise endures forever. Proverbs 15:33 says, the fear of the Lord is instruction in wisdom, and humility comes before honor. I love that verse. Proverbs 9:10 says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is insight. Proverbs 14:27 says, the fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, that one may turn away from the snares of death. So we get this repetitive theme of fear of the Lord, the fear of the Lord, the fear of the Lord, the fear of the Lord. Now, I didn't grow up having nightmares. I didn't grow up being afraid of a lot of things. And so when I read this, I never hear the terror of the Lord. I never hear being fearful of. I wasn't afraid of my parents. There was never a moment where in my life personally where I have been in a season or a place where I was just under fear. So when I read this, it's very natural for me to go, oh, I know what that means. It means this reverent awe, this understanding of who and what God is, and that word, that respect of the Lord, this understanding of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Some of you may not have grown up in that context, and you'd be going, so I'm supposed to be terrified of God, and that's where all wisdom starts. No, he's not the lightning bolt God, just because you messed up. Now, I did grow up in some church services where it kind of felt like that, to where if I did anything wrong, the fear of the Lord better be upon you, and it wasn't really, it wasn't taught in a healthy way. Not saying it wasn't effective, but I don't know that it was proper in the translation of this verse. As you start walking through it and go, okay, so what does this mean? It means that I need to recognize and understand who and what God is. And when I understand who and what God is in my life, that He is the supreme creator, He is the center of everything. And if I get outside of that, things get wonky. That's a biblical word, wonky, if you didn't know. I don't think it really is, but I'm sure we could find some word in there that's close. How many of you know what I'm talking about? That if you're following God, things are not going to be perfect, but if you're following God, it seems like things go in a certain direction. But the moment you get outside of God and you're doing your own thing, it gets wacky. Remember when I asked you, have you ever done anything without thinking about it at all? And you're like, I don't know what happened there. I know what happened there, because I've done it before in my life. I've made a decision on my own and didn't check with God or Jennifer or anybody. Just did it. And I did it, and when I get done doing it, I turn around and go, what did I do? Anybody with me on that? Just want to make sure I'm not alone. Okay. So God is going, hey. Solomon says, hey, I need you to understand this. If you want wisdom in its truest form, here's what the Word will tell you. The world will tell you that you can find wisdom outside of God. That hey, listen, Not every good thing comes from God, except that the Bible says every good and perfect thing comes from above. And so if that's my standard, if that's my starting point, is that I'm going to begin with God, then the wisdom in my life that I want to be effective has to be born out of my relationship with Him and out of my understanding of who He is. So I'm going to start with God. But today I want to break down the three people that He introduces. And part of you, some of you are going to have a knee jerk, and you're going to be like, well, I know which one I am. I know which one I am. Because nobody wants to be the other two. And so you're going to knee jerk and go, yeah, well, I know I'm not this one. I'm definitely not that one. But I'll tell you, just lean in. Because if you're like me when I was studying this, I was really excited when I started and really convicted when I stopped. So he mentions three groups of people. The first he mentions, to the simple. To the simple. Depending on your background or your culture, or maybe even your language that you use or slang that you use, this could almost come across as an insult. It's not how Solomon means it. The simple is simply this: they just don't know. How many of you have ever said to somebody, you don't know what you don't know? Right? You've heard that phrase, you don't know what you don't know. It's like having your kid with you, and they're helping you do something, and you get mad at them because they don't know what you want them to grab. But they don't know what you want them to grab. They've never held it in their hand. It's never been explained to them other than, go get me that. Go get you what? Give me the wrench. What's a wrench? Ugh. You have to walk through an explanation of it, but they don't know what they don't know. And so if they don't know what they don't know, they're just in a place where they don't know. And so he says, to the simple, give prudence. What you want to do with the simple is you want to teach them to be cautious. You want to teach them to kind of have this ability to look through certain things. You want to teach them caution in their life. And to the young, and it's just, again, same group of people, these that don't know, the young don't know. And so what are we giving them? We want to give them knowledge and discretion. How many of you know discretion is becoming a lost art? How many, just social awareness to the room in which you're in? My kids did this a few months back to me. I shared this story before where they did the whole prank where they had me on camera. They had a camera over here, they had a camera over here, and they thought it was going to be hilarious because they have no sense of humor. And what they said is like there was this thing going around, and what they were going to do is they were going to do this thing at dinner. We were all sitting there having dinner, and they were going to tell Jennifer to shut up. And I will cut you over my wife. So we're sitting there, and I'm at dinner, and they like, one of my children refused to come to the table. You see, he had social awareness. I think he may have the gift of wisdom because he didn't show up. He's like, I'm not going to the table. Why? Because Dad's going to kill somebody. And if he doesn't kill somebody, there's going to be enough shrapnel from the table exploding that it's not good. And I don't have a bad temper. I don't lose my stuff unless it's my wife or my children. And so we're sitting there, I'm eating, got my knife, got my fork, cutting up. Jennifer's like, hey, you want potatoes? No, I don't want potatoes. Hey, you need to eat more. You're not eating that much. Moms, how many of you do that? Kids sitting there, they're not eating, they're just picking around. So Jennifer's being mama. She's like, you just need to eat some more. Get some more food on the table. Get some more. Mom, I don't want potatoes. Hey, just get one more scoop of potatoes. Shut up, Mom, I don't want potatoes. And the room went black. I was sitting there like this with my silverware, the proper way a developed human being holds silverware. In a matter of seconds, I had them in my hands with the knife out this end and the fork out this end. And I put my hands on the table and looked up, And before I could move in my chair, there was panic. We're just kidding, we're just kidding, we're just kidding. It's a joke, it's a joke, it's a joke, it's a joke, Dad, it's a joke. We're just kidding, we're just kidding. I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry, Mom. About that time, when all the apologies happened, my son that didn't come to the table poked his head out of the bathroom. Told you wisdom. He knew there needed to be a witness. I said, what are you doing? Like, we just thought it'd be funny. I'm like, you need a definition of funny. Because I was going to kill one of them. I was going to kill one of them. I have 6. I could spare one. My son was sitting closer to me, and he said, Braden, he pushed back from the table. Dad, I'm sorry. Because he knew he was fork side. And they said, we could see you, your color changed. Like you went from regular to red, and I'm like, why would you, I don't understand. Like, in my house, growing up, like that was the S word. Like literally, if you were to ask my older kids when they were growing up, shut up and stupid were the S words. They were curse words in my home. You did not say them. And so the fact that they chose that one, it was as bad if somebody dropped the F-bomb at my table. I was that mad. I'm like, why would, zero social awareness. I said, guys, look, you can pick in a lot of ways, but you came at a whole lifelong history of stuff when you did that. They didn't get it. They needed a little more discretion. I think discernment and discretion is one of the things we have a challenge with in our culture, in our community, and just our world today of knowing, just knowing. Do you have a lens? I wrote down another definition of this because I wanted to make sure that I understood it the way I was raised. This is what Solomon's trying to do. He says, now to give prudence to the simple and knowledge and discretion to the young. And I rewrote that verse, not because it's a better translation, but so that I can understand it. It simply says this: to offer caution and the necessary filters to those who have yet to develop them. I want to be able to offer caution and the necessary filters in your mind so that when this comes up, you think the right things about it. So that when this happens, you go, whoa, I don't think that's a good idea. I think I need a better filter on this. I think I need better discretion, better discernment. I need to make sure I say the right thing here or do the right thing here, because they don't know what they don't know, and they won't know it unless you and I show it. There's got to be someone teaching these things. So Solomon says, give this to the simple. So Pastor Vince, I'm not simple. Yes, we are. We are. The moment you begin thinking you're an expert, it moves you into a different category on Solomon's list. And so be very cautious. Again, remember I told you the knee-jerk reaction is going to be the next one. This is where everybody wants to be. And it's simply this: to the wise. To the wise, he says this. Oh, let me give you this verse. Proverbs chapter 14, verse 15 says, the simple believes everything. Tell me we don't live there. But the prudent, the wise, gives thought to his steps. The simple believe everything. And so they have to be taught discretion. They have to be taught understanding. They have to be taught. Now, they can be gifted with discernment. They can be gifted. But there's got to be some, it's given. Give prudence to, and knowledge and discretion to. This comes from someplace. To the wise, he says this in verse 5 of chapter 1. Let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands, the wise, obtain guidance to understand a proverb and a saying, the words of the wise and their riddle. I'm going to give you what I just wrote down. I'm just going to read it to you like I wrote it in my notes. This is a teachable spirit, a cyclical spirit. What is that? it's someone who understands the cycle of wisdom, that if I take it in, it ought to come out. If I receive wisdom, the natural progression should be that it is then poured out to someone else. I don't want to just get fat on the wisdom and knowledge of the Lord. That's pointless if I don't give it away, if I don't hand it off, if I don't allow this to pour out from me. And so the wise is always learning, because the vat, the tank, should always be empty from pouring out. I think about this in the creation when you see God set up this garden, and in the Garden of Eden, he has this tree of the wisdom of knowledge of good and of evil. And I love the fact that it's a tree, because the tree has seasons of growth and growth and growth and growth. It's continually, and as wise people, we too should have seasons of growth where things are coming out of us and we're pouring into other people. And then there are times we're taking in so that we can grow and pour out again. That's what the wise does. And so Solomon says to the wise here, basically in a phrase, keep it up. This is what you should be doing. You should be continually increasing in knowledge. He says, you have some, but increase in it. If you have learned all that you're going to learn, I pity you. I'm so sorry. Ask God to give you a teachable spirit. You can see people that, I love people when I get around people that ask good questions. And they don't ask questions like, hey, how was your week? Because they know you can answer by going, good. And that's the end of the discussion. I love being around people that go, hey, tell me the best part of your week. Hey, what did you struggle with this week? Hey, what relationships are really filling you up, giving you good life right now? What kind of, they change the whole conversation. And if you got people like that around you, be thankful for them, because they are drawing things out of you that you didn't know you need drawn out of you. If you don't have people like that around you, become one. Become that person that's asking more questions, that's asking the right questions, so that wisdom can be shared. You don't gain anything from good. How's your week? Bad. Sucked. I'm tired. Ask right. Be wise in this. Okay? I would love to spend more time on this one, but I got to get into the last one. See what I said? Everybody wants to be the wise one. They're okay with simple. They want to be wise. It's okay to not know what you don't know. I didn't know that. I like having discussions with people that get mad, and I'm like, hold on, I didn't know that. I wasn't aware of that, and they're still mad about it. Like, why are you mad? You're mad because I didn't know something that I didn't know. And there was no way for me to know it, and you're mad about it. Yeah, but! Okay. The last group of people that he mentions, and it's so interesting to me that he gets through all 7 verses and even gives the climax of the beginning of wisdom. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom and knowledge. And then the very last phrase in verse 7. The fool despises wisdom and instruction. The fool, man. Fool is mentioned 39 times in the book of Proverbs. 39 times, and every time it's mentioned with a warning. The fool does this, and it causes this. And then the other parts where the fool is mentioned, boy, y'all better lean into this. The warning is given not to the fool, but to the people that engage in debate with the fool. Some of y'all don't even know what we're about to do, and that's okay. But here's the reality. You and I are still fools. If I were to ask you, Do you have an area of your life in which you're an expert? Most of us have something that we would go, yeah, I don't know if I would say expert, but it's pretty high. I mean, I have a lot of knowledge about that. And so we tend to lean only in our expert world. And because we are a expert, we sometimes believe we're the expert on everything. And I found out as I'm studying this, and I'm sitting here and God, I'm reading and I'm studying, and I'm like, man, God, I think that, I'm so thankful that you made me wise. And he was like, and humble. And I'm like, yeah, and humble. I'm humble too. And not catching it. And as I'm reading, I'm understanding that as I study the fool, the fool doesn't say, let me give you a statement of the fool. The fool says, I got it, when they're offered help. The fool says, I don't need anything, when they're drowning. The fool is so full of pride that they don't recognize that destruction is coming. And that's when I realized that, like that tree of wisdom that I talked about that's growing, that there are days in my marriage that I am simple and I don't know what I don't know. There are days in my marriage I'm an expert. I get it right. But there are days in my marriage where I'm the fool. And I just assume out of pride, why don't you understand what I'm dealing with? Why don't you get this yet? There are days in my career when I feel like I'm surrounded by, if I could just get anybody to help me. We've been asking you to help you. You keep saying, I got it. You keep saying, it's just easier for me to do it by myself. And pride always comes before the fall. Always. Without fail. Always. As sure as Jesus Christ is returning one day, pride always precedes the fall. And I was reading through this, and I'm like, man, God, it's not why I wanted to do this sermon series. I really wanted to talk about some stuff, not this. And he's like, if you're going to go into the next season of your ministry, Vince, this next season of this wisdom in your heart, you've got to recognize some things that are still in your heart. And I need you to talk about those things because people don't realize that those things still sit in their heart. That wisdom isn't, and foolishness is not just about a sin that's in your life. It may be the attitude in which you do the good things in your life that's foolish. And if you live the life of a fool, Solomon has firm words. He says, like the legs of a lame man is wisdom shared from the lips of a fool. He's going, Solomon says, even if a fool tries to say something wise, people won't believe him because they've said too many foolish things before. They're useless. So that sounds awful. Is there hope? Yeah. Thanks be to God, there's hope. There's hope. Because there was a thief on a cross that didn't know what he knew. There was a Peter who was full of pride was a disciple of Jesus. Full of pride and acted a fool a lot of the time. And yet, Jesus built upon him. And so there's hope for all of us. But the biggest issue is the title of the sermon today is you got to start somewhere. And it's not just that understanding and knowing that the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. That's a simple principle. We live in the Bible Belt. Most of you understand that there is a God and he is the center of everything. That part I can get people to understand. The reality that you and I have to embrace is that different areas of our life, we may be one of these. You can be just as simple as you are foolish. And you can be just as wise in another area. It's ongoing. It is continually changing. So today, I just wanted to introduce to you the idea that you're not one. The reason Solomon in his wisdom mentions all three of them in the opening text so that we would all understand that we're all three. We're all three. And that's why this book is for us. It's for us. Bow with me, church. It's critical to understand that the Lord is for you. That the decisions that you face in this life to him are minute, yet they are also precious to him because they are your decisions. If you want this gift of wisdom or this endowment of wisdom, that it begins at one place, and that is at the feet of the King. And at the feet of the King, we say, Lord, I cannot do this without you. We read it in that proverb a moment ago, that humility comes before honor. Before honor. I have to humble myself to the Lord and say, Lord, I cannot do this without you. Lord, make me not wise in my own eyes, because destruction follows. Lord, give me understanding in who you are and what you would have me to do. And make it clear. God, I pray that in this series you would make it clear. That we would understand, God, that in our wisdom we are blessed. And God, in our foolishness, help us be convicted to change it. Teach us your ways. Give us not only the light unto our path, but give us the path. We're going to trust you. We ask all this in Jesus' precious name. Amen.